Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Panos session. See, everyone's coming on in now as we speak. Let's just jump right into it. So, again, welcome everyone. Today we'll be talking about bringing back some marketing basics in 2022. A couple housekeeping items before we get going. Please, if you have any questions, feel free to drop it in the Q&A chat. And then as soon as we wrap up kind of the questions I have for Mel and Amanda today, we can get into those. But at any point in time, if you have something that pops in your head, please drop it in. And if it's not answered, throughout this conversation, then we'll get right to it. But with that, again, welcome everybody who just joined in. I am Jordan Julio, Digital Strategist here at Panos, and today I am joined by Mel Coleman, Senior Manager of Strategy, and Amanda Rose, Senior Vice President of Delivery. And I'll let you introduce yourself first, Mel.
All right. Hi. I am Mel, Senior Manager of Strategy, overseeing media, sales, and marketing here at Panos. I am a former banker, so I am very familiar with everything, all of the challenges and opportunities and fun times that you face. But really here at Panos, just really responsible for making sure that you're found in the market. So that is social media, traditional, digital, organic channels, as well as all paid. So it's a really fun and exciting time, but very diverse. So it's always something different. Amanda?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us. As Jordan said, my name is Amanda Rowe. I'm the Senior Vice President of Delivery here at Panos. So I oversee the entire delivery team, which is made up of media, web design and development, and creative services, as well as our client services department, who works with all of our clients across the country on coming up with strategies, whether it be for lending, deposit, CRE, whatever their needs are. They help build the strategies, and then Mel's team helps push them to market. While I'm not a former banker, I have been here almost 9 years. So I've been working in the banking space for quite a while, and I do have my CFMP through the ABA.
Thank you guys for the quick introductions. Great stuff. So getting into the webinar itself, so the topic overall is going to be rethinking the old, and then what we can bring back, kind of resurrecting in 2022 and beyond. And so the first question I have on the docket is, and this is something that's older than me, email. So Mel, if you want to start us off, why is email new again, and why is it relevant, and how can it be utilized in 2022 and beyond?
Before Bill gets into that, I would like you to stop saying email is older than you, because it makes the rest of us feel really old.
Yeah, I was like, we're just going to start with an insult. That's great. Yeah. Thank you, Jordan. But no, so I mean, email, I think most of us have all kind of lived through the life cycle of email, in that it started off super cool, and then it got spammy because it was overused. And now it's actually really cool again. I promise. And that it really is actually a foundational component to any personalized marketing strategy, particularly since we're moving into a cookieless world starting in 2023. Email is the gateway to personalized marketing and ensuring that you can still deliver hyper specific messaging for your existing as well as prospective customers and members if you have their email. Cannot say this enough. If you are not actively collecting and soliciting emails from your existing base, that needs to be a priority in 2022. You must get these emails. And one is for that it should be a cornerstone of your onboarding strategy. So how are you talking to your existing members and customers? If you are, it should be via email. One, there's no production costs, low production costs. No postage. Again, you can segment that list any which way you want to, with just slight tweaks to copy, and all of a sudden it's super relevant and therefore likely to get more engagement. Particularly as we're talking about cross-selling services or deepening that share of wallet, email is truly the number one way to go about this. And then if you wanted to get into other advanced kind of marketing strategies around getting the email itself, you need to have email foundationally. But the difference is, and how it really becomes new, is the content. Often traditional kind of bank email tends to be, I want people to know about this. That doesn't work in 2022. It's consumers saying, I want to know about this. So what are you going to tell me that's relevant to my life and what I'm facing right now? And that's where it's a subtle shift, but it's a very distinct one and one that users can pick up on really, really quickly.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Email is something that, as I'm navigating through, my newer career in the workspace, email is something I'm glued to each and every day. And so reaching, my audience, the Gen Z, the Gen Zers and those who really most financial institutions want to appease to and try to get their business moving down the line, email is definitely a great start. But there's something that's really important as well. And Amanda, this is for you. Where do you recommend the best place to purchase an email list would be without worrying about, being blacklisted and getting in trouble?
Yeah, so this is definitely a touchy subject. And I think a lot of marketers have had an experience or have heard of, a horror story of someone who purchased an email list, they uploaded it into their email system, they sent out a massive email, and then they got a ton of bounce backs. They had their IP blacklisted. They couldn't even reach their own customers anymore. So that's definitely something that you have to be concerned about. But there are ways that you can now work with purchased email lists that don't have that same impact. So rather than buying a list and uploading it into your email platform, you can work with vendors that have lists available that are pre-opted in, so they don't violate CAN spam, they're very safe, but the email is sent by that vendor on behalf of your institution. But it's really incredible the way that you can now screen these lists. So if you think about direct mail, you can not only geographically target, but also by household size, household income, what their interests are. So you can really hone in and say, okay, these are homeowners in my geographic area that are likely to need a home equity, and that's who you're going out to. But again, it's really important that you find vendors who have those pre-opted in lists, that they're doing the work to curate those lists and they're sending on your behalf. You don't want to be importing them directly. And typically they curate those lists by doing things like surveys for a prize. So you'll see a lot of times, fill out this survey and you'll win $20 to Starbucks or $5 here. So they get people to fill out surveys, input information about their interests, things about their demographics, and then you're able to curate this really incredible list. We've had numbers of clients doing them for many years now and see some really incredible open rates, seeing upwards of 28% on some of them for open rates, which is really high for email, and great click-through rates as well. And then also seeing results. So we know that impressions and clicks aren't everything, but also having clients report back that the campaigns have been very successful and they've seen upticks in mortgages and commercial real estate loans, et cetera.
And that's something quickly, all emails are trackable beyond the open rates and the engagement with the email itself. So adding UTM parameters to the links that are within the email then help you within Google Analytics to see how much traffic is actually coming back to the site and where are they going, what are they engaging with. So you should always be learning from it, but it really means that you should be tracking everything that's happening within that email.
I absolutely agree with that. And to go back to Mel's point about content is important when you're emailing your existing customers, it's also important when you're emailing people that maybe aren't familiar with you. It's really crucial that you have good content that's going to relate to them, that speaks directly to their need, and then also that you have calls to action in the right places and that are high enough up so people get the gist of what it is and then they know what the next step is and they can quickly click through to the landing page or the website.
Right. No, totally agreed. So you have email, and that's definitely an older tactic, and that's great, and it works. You've seen the conversion rates almost 28% in some cases. That's wonderful. And when we're talking about getting a digital list, there's also another method that goes even further back in the email. Sorry, I'm older than myself as well.
The insults keep coming. So
we're talking old traditional, way before the even advent of the computer in the digital space. Direct mail. So we have a direct mail piece. We send it out. It's great. But unlike an email, is it trackable? Like, then what? Like, does it just go off into the abyss? Like, how can we track it? Amanda, could you talk to something in that realm about direct mail and like go into the household?
Absolutely. And I would say that there's multiple ways to do this. One of them, and I think it's a tried and true method, is benchmarking. If you haven't been doing anything and then you send a direct mail and you see an uptick, you can draw some correlations there between a new effort that you've put into place in the market and increased new business for whatever that product is. The other thing is using QR codes or custom URLs. So not talking about go on Bitly and get a free short URL. No one's going to type that in.
No.
But a lot of content management systems, or there's websites out there that you can purchase custom URLs. And it might be something like, abcbank.com/mortgage, or, but it can be something very specific that people can easily type in and go to, and that they were driven there by the direct mail effort, as long as you're not using that same URL for other campaigns. You want to make sure that, well, it might mean you have to have multiple custom URLs with duplicates of pages. You want to make sure that you have it set up so that you can really track it. And then the other one, and I think we're really seeing a resurgence in this, I think it's being used more effectively than it ever has been, and that's QR codes. Now, QR codes are probably older than you two, but I remember when they first sort of started coming around, there was a lot of interest in them. People liked that now you could track if someone saw a print ad and scanned it, or a direct mail, or all of these other traditional mediums. However, you had to have specific apps for it. It wasn't intuitive. They were difficult to get created. And that's all really changed. I think all of us now have probably been in a restaurant where instead of a menu, there's a table tent with a QR code on it. You just open your camera, you scan it, and it pops right up. So QR codes have become significantly easier to use. And as a result of that, you're able to really leverage them for things like direct mail. And I mentioned print. If you're still doing newspaper, I'll throw that one in there again. It's another great way to track your efforts.
QR codes have been definitely seamless. I go to a restaurant, as have my phone, it's just quick and easy. No need. But you mentioned direct mail piece, and then you mentioned something else I just blanked on. But what else can QR code be useful for in the marketing realm for financial institutions?
I mean, there is no limit. That's the exciting thing. I mean, I do remember my very first marketing job. We had QR codes on the back of t-shirts, thinking that it was super cool, but nobody wanted to download the app because apps are still very scary. Now, I mean, especially where the competition around rates and around lending products and around how do we connect everything back, more of our clients and prospects and FIs in general are talking about ROI in a way that we haven't really heard before, that it's much more holistic. It's not just what is the ROI of this paid effort. It's like, okay, what is the ROI? Like, what is actually being generated from all of these efforts, and how do we track it? And that's where QR codes are just very fun, easy little tools. So we have we've seen them in branches to drive people back to rates rather than printing out rate sheets all of the time. You can always still have them easily printed off, but having them handy right there. Also to start applications, so that we can quickly scan, have the HELOC app up or have the mortgage app up. Even if they're in branch, they may not have the time. They may not want to sit down and talk to somebody and go, that's uncomfortable. We inherently now don't really like close contact with people for extended periods of time. So QR codes are a nice stopgap to then say, okay, we are driving people back into that system. And then there's the more guerrilla style marketing ground game tactics. And that's where, especially if you're in a college town and you have a cool product, or you have some kind of a discount, something's happening, a promotion, and you're like, how do I get in front of that? That could be a QR code on the back of a coaster. And if you have rewards or you have something happening, being like, hey, the next one's on us, apply now. And they can, and be like, it takes 5 minutes. And so there's so many, there's really no limit beyond what you can see the value of. So really, truly, there's no bounds for it, because it is so trackable, because within each QR code, you can have those UTM parameters and tie it back to every single individual effort. So we break out QR codes right now, especially for branches, for example. We can then track in analytics how often those are being scanned by branch and to what URL. So where are they going, from what locations, and how often, on what days of the week, all of the things that's providing insight into also what is that branch audience looking for that maybe we're not currently providing.
Yeah, I think really having a holistic view of what your marketing efforts want to be, and how you can leverage things like QR codes to really get the tracking ability on things that aren't usually trackable. You mentioned the coasters in College Town. Super fun idea. I know myself and my peers would absolutely love that. And that could just be, hey, if you want $10 off your next purchase, look into a checking account at, your financial institution. And that's a sponsorship that goes into the local community as well. So it's twofold. You're growing your business with the QR code, and you're also growing your community in that relationship, which is vital. So we touched upon email, direct mail, and QR codes. But what about the big one? And that is TV, television. It's been here for decades. I personally don't believe it's going to go anywhere. It's going to just probably evolve and change. But the thing is, TV is expensive, and it went away. But why would I want to go back? Even as a Gen Zer, I know that I personally don't watch cable. Not many of my parents watch cable. We kind of go over to the OTT and over the top streaming services, and watch videos on our phone, etc. But what's the benefits of going back to TV?
Sure. So I think that that's another big question. As you said, it's the big one. So I think it depends on how you're looking at TV. I think that, we've continued to see sort of a decline, or not an uptick, if you want to look at it that way, and going back to broadcast where you're on, ABC, and you're on the Channel 7 News. So you're not looking so much at broadcast, but more at cable, and then combining that with OTT and streaming. With cable, in many markets, and I'm not going to say every market, but in many markets, you're able to better target so that there's less waste. With broadcast, we were talking about this recently with a client. If they go on their local TV station, I'm an hour and a half north of them, I will see those ads if I put the TV on. So there's a lot of waste in that. With cable, you can hone it in a lot more. It's also, cable is generally more affordable, and you can pick and choose the programming. You can with broadcast as well, but cable has many, many more channels, so a lot more programming to choose from. So you can identify who your audience is, what they're likely to be watching, and target based on those programs. Yeah. Many cable company. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mel.
No, I was just going to say that's truly streaming, and in many ways mirrors exactly the kind of targeting that you're looking at with classic digital. So it's a nice stepping stone. It's a blend, especially for the boards and C-suites that are like, I need to be on the news. We're like, you can be on the news, but also on Bravo, where most of your audience is actually watching, the latest episode of Shipwrecked or something.
Okay. So, and that's the great thing with many of the cable companies. I know the big one in our area is, it's not called it is still Xfinity if you're paying your cable and internet bill, but they call it something Effect TV.
Effective, yeah.
Effective. They also have streaming attached to it. So you can buy your cable, and then you can also buy streaming. So anyone that, has that Xfinity internet, but is streaming streaming Bravo and watching Shipwrecked, they're still going to see your ad. So you can do a combo. Then you can also buy streaming separately. So there's a lot of providers out there. You can even go straight through the cable company, but there's a lot of providers that allow you to purchase streaming only. So then you can start looking at, how do I get on Hulu? How do I get on Roku? How do I get on Sling, Disney Plus? All of these direct services that people are buying, you can go straight through with streaming vendors and get on all of those. So you're really able to still get your message out to a huge audience, but a more defined audience based upon your geography and who your target demographic is.
So all of that sounds really, really great. Broadcasting TV, OTT, etc. But we're not putting QR codes on our ads. What's the best way that you recommend that we can measure our performance to this broad audience, and something that seems so untrackable as broadcasting?
Well, you can put QR codes on your ads. I have seen it done. I personally am too lazy to get up and walk over to my TV to scan it with the QR code. So I would say, I'll let Mel speak to the streaming side of things. If we're talking broadcast and cable, the more traditional of the outlets, it's going to go back to what I said about direct mail. It might be just that you did some benchmarking, and so that there was an uptick. It's also generally much more about brand awareness and less about a specific product promotion when we're talking TV. We're almost never seeing rates in TV spots because they're expensive to produce. So you don't want to have to be constantly updating those if you have rates in them. So it's really more of a brand awareness tool than it is a straight product tool.
Yeah. And that's the number one thing to keep in mind, because with the ROI conversations, everyone wants ROI for everything. And that's just not always possible, especially if you have an integrated campaign with a lot of different components, and one is just about awareness. that's just deepening share of wallet and just trying to make sure that people know who you are. But there are also some really, really cool tracking tools out there, such as call tracking and making sure that you have a custom phone number that shows up, and that can look like have a local area code, or an 800, whatever. But that'll be specific for that TV campaign or the streaming campaign, if that's something of interest. On the streaming side in particular, we can also see impressions. If there's clicks, sometimes people are viewing on tablets or whatever else, and that can still show up so they can click and engage. But we can just start to get a sense of location and impressions and see really where we're generating the most interest, and the most awareness. But it does take thinking outside the box and working across departments to really get an understanding, even anecdotally, of the types of things that are happening as a result of the campaign.
Yeah, no, that definitely helps paint a clear picture. It makes total sense. So let's get into the questions from the viewers. So the first one that I have on my docket is, Mel, you mentioned ROI, and not to move away from TV because you can certainly circle back on that, but how do you measure ROI when you utilize email or like have a email effort and campaign?
Yeah, so I mean, this goes back to tracking. So, and that should be tracking everywhere. First off, make sure that you have event tracking on your website so you know how often everything is being clicked and engaged with, and then work backwards. So once you know that you have event tags on your, like on Apply Now, contact a lender, on completing a form, calling somebody, that just sends a note to Google Analytics to just say, hey, somebody did this. And then from there, if you have a UTM parameter, which is urgent tracking module, it's a simple just snippet at the end of your URL that'll tell you the source and medium of where that click was generated from. So you can say purchase eBlast for this commercial lending campaign and somebody completed a form, you know, then directly this came from that effort. And conversely, you can also say this just came from somebody who already knew us and they directly came to our site. They came from organic, they came from some other referral, but tracking every single thing you do helps you to know if an effort is working. And sometimes it doesn't, and that's okay, but you don't know until you try. So sending out those e-blasts and really trying to find the correct way to resonate all comes down to tracking. And then on top of that, I think more ways than one, having benchmarking in place is just a number one best practice. You should always generally know how everything is performing. How do you do on a regular basis, baseline with no marketing efforts? And then layer that on top and say, okay, what is the incremental increase when we do this form of marketing? Okay, then we tend to see a 1% increase, whatever it is. But with all of those coming together, that's where you can start to have a more holistic conversation top down.
You don't know if you don't try. That's a great message.
Yes.
And so this last Q&A questions that I see on the docket here, and this kind of relates as well. We're talking about the holistic approach of your marketing efforts. The question is, should you combine your other marketing efforts along with TV advertising, or should they just be separate? What would be best practice?
No, I think you should always combine marketing efforts. I think there's not a time that I can remember that we've said only do this one thing and ignore everything else. I really think it's, it does depend on budget. We understand that unfortunately budgets are not endless, and you do have to take that into consideration, as well as what the goal is. If it's brand awareness versus strictly driving lending, mortgages or commercial real estate, you're going to look at different avenues because there are different target audiences, there are different end goals that you're trying to accomplish. But absolutely, I think if you are doing TV, first of all, you've put money and time and effort into creating a TV spot, which is not easy. You want to put that everywhere. It should be on your social media. You want to have it on YouTube. YouTube is what, Mel, the second biggest search engine in the world?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So you want to be on YouTube as well. And then you want to combine those efforts. Again, it depends on what it is. If it's brand awareness, look at Billboard, another thing that you maybe haven't done for a while, but could come back into the mix. Tie direct mail into it, do emails, bring digital. I mean, I really think that you want to take a holistic approach to your marketing. And that includes when you're talking TV, it's never just do this one thing and that's gonna solve all of your problems. You have to do everything and then track and test and see what's working, what's driving awareness, and go from there.
and I have to say it, I know that Amanda and Jordan, you've heard it a few times. I used to work in politics, and we always lived by the mantra that you have to meet somebody. You have to meet them 7 times, like shake their hand, in order for them to even consider getting their vote. And financial products are very similar because it's a relationship, it's a commitment. So just because you like to watch the evening news doesn't mean that 90% of your audience does. So this is why, really having that media mix is imperative to making sure that you are penetrating your market, which is very difficult if we view our market through our lens and not everyone's lens that falls within that. And that's where you can get into personas and understanding really who are you engaging with, who do you want to engage with, really what makes your audience tick. But yeah, really making sure that you have more than one is ideal.
Right. No, again, totally agreed. Another question. So Amanda and Mel, in your experiences, do audiences engage regularly with vanity URL/QR codes, without or unless there's a compelling special offer or promotion, call to action, value for doing so?
I can start the answer, and then Mel, I'll certainly pass it over to you. I think that audiences are always likely to be more engaged if there's a promotional offer, open a checking account and get $200 or $500 off closing, whatever it may be. I think you're always going to have a more engaged audience if there's a special offer. However, I do know that we've had a number of clients using QR codes without offers, and they have been doing so successfully. People are still scanning them and, interacting with their content.
Yeah. And again, it goes to, I don't want to provide somebody with only one way to engage with us, regardless of what it is. So if they are most comfortable doing that, if that's how they want to share that link with somebody else and that's easier for them, I would rather have somebody have multiple ways to engage with us regardless of that offer. But yeah, to Amanda's point, whenever you have a promotion, people are more likely to engage just in general.
No, absolutely. And that's the overall importance of having a campaign, having a call to action so people can convert. Because if you just see a message and read the message and there's nothing more for you to do, it's like, okay, I see your message and that's it. Having that extra step to make a movement, to make a conversion is super critical in marketing, especially in 2022 and beyond. But with that is all the questions that I have today. Thank you so much again, Mel and Amanda, for joining me. Again, if anyone has anything, feel free to visit the panel's website and share your email, and then either myself, Mel, or Amanda can totally jump on top of that and get right back to you. But if there's nothing else, I think we can wrap up.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Jordan.
Yeah, thank you, Jordan, and thank you everyone that joined us.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day, all.